Hello and welcome to One on One. I am Cyril Stober. Today my guest comes with an eye on advancing forensic standards and cultivating leaders in forensics and fraud investigations. He's at the top of an organization committed to raising leaders in all sectors of the economy. But let's begin by introducing Dr. Iliyasu Gashinbaki, President and Chairman, Governing Council of the Chartered Institute of Forensics and Certified Fraud Investigators of Nigeria. Dr. Gashinbaki, thanks for joining us on One on One.
Thank you for having me.
Right.
Yes.
It's a rather complicated and mouthful here. The Chartered Institute of Forensics and Certified Fraud Investigators. But more importantly, it's relatively new.
Yes.
So let's begin from how this institute came about.
Yeah, we are actually fairly new. The institute got chartered precisely on the 23rd of December 2022. So we are barely 1 year, 6 or 7 months old now since we're in July.
Right.
And of course, again, it's an institute that should have been there maybe several decades ago, considering its strategic importance to the economy and to the to the proper functioning of the financial systems, and of course, its applications in the law enforcement ecosystem.
Right. So what does it seek to do precisely? I know you say fraud investigators and forensics. And what is the application of forensics in detecting or stemming fraud?
Well, the applications of forensics within the ecosystems of law enforcement has wide range applications. As of today, forensics cuts across about 127 domain of knowledge. And it is very, very useful when it comes to crime investigations, analysis, and discoveries of both physical, economic, financial crimes, and digital crimes. So its applications and its broad nature is multi-sectorial and multidisciplinary in nature.
So for this institute, what are its statements in the Nigerian financial ecosystem?
Well, maybe I will put it in this context. There are key component of the law that empowers the institute to intervene in the entire financial ecosystem and then the law enforcement sector in Nigeria. One of those key areas is the powers to establish forensic laboratories for analysis, for government, for law enforcement, for private sector, and for even individuals. So what that does is that for the very first time, forensic analysis can now, for lack of a better word, it's now democratized in a way that even people outside the law enforcement, private lawyers, accountants, engineers, can now go to independent forensic laboratories under the institute to analyze anything that they want for the purposes of investigations. And the council, for the purposes of that, has approved the establishment of 5 laboratories. The document forensic lab that will be responsible for analysis of any form of documents. And that is why once that document lab is up, that means the issues of questioned documents, forgeries of any form of certificates, revenue receipts, and anything documents, we now have a lab that can authenticate its originality. Then the digital lab will also deal with anything to do with servers, computers, cameras, and even the cyberspace. So it's also going to deal with that. Then we have the engineering lab. I must add that I can't wait to have the engineering lab up. You've seen what has happened in Jos recently. We've had cases of multiple collapse of buildings all over this country, almost like every other month. Now with the engineering lab up, I think we will put an end to that. And we have taken the first step of engaging the Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN, to work with them to see that the laboratory comes up so that structural analysis will be done, but for also concrete and structures. Because basically, once that is up, I think we will see the beginning of the end of engineering fraud or engineering malpractices.
Well, of all these labs that
Yes.
You've secured approval to establish, none is up and running yet.
Yes, but for example, the digital lab, NIDA, has offered to work with us to establish jointly the digital cyber forensic laboratories. And then, of course, the last two that I haven't mentioned, which is the medical laboratory that will deal with DNA, and then it will deal with also toxicology, where toxicology will be very helpful for food and drugs, which means that laboratory will support whatever NAFDAC is doing. And then the last, but not the least, is the physical and ballistic forensics laboratory. Now, the physical lab, basically that's what people see in the movies. Once there's a crime scene, it's condoned and all of that. So that's a typical setup that you find done by physical forensics and ballistic forensic laboratory. So basically those are the 5 key laboratories that the Institute will operate.
Right, now, amazing that all this while there hasn't been a body like this, as you stated in your opening comments.
Yeah, it's there have been several agitations for establishing forensic bodies. In fact, when we went to the National Assembly to get the charter, we found, I think, about 4 similar bodies wanted to get charter. And what the National Assembly, in its own wisdom, decided to say, you know what? We have multiple bodies coming to knock our door for legislation of forensics. Let's consolidate everything into one. And that's what they did. They collapsed every other charter before them into our own, and they gave us a single charter with Section 6 of the Act that empowers the Institute to intervene in the multi-sectorial and the multidisciplinary areas of forensics.
Now, Dr. Gashinbaki, I'm interested a lot in the financial aspect of this, or the application in Nigeria's financial ecosystem. Now, the question of fraud and corruption has almost brought the country to its knees over the years, and despite all efforts to fight, it would seem that a huge task still is ahead.
Yes.
How would this body begin to apply its mandate to protecting the financial ecosystem? Let's begin from public finances. You did say that your institute can also go into the private sector, but let's start off from the public sector.
Yes. Let me say that the institute also has a college called the Nigerian College of Forensics and Fraud Investigators. So that is the hatchery. And as we speak, the college is domiciled in the EFCC Academy. That's where we hold all our trainings. So far, since you have mentioned the public sector, We have intervened in training of the police, the EFCC, the ICPC, in building their capacity for 21st century law enforcement challenges. And then, of course, senior public officers, especially within the office of the Auditor General of the Federation and Accountant General of the Federation, we have also done so much of capacity building for them. So that is ongoing, because that's basically our first strategy. Engage the critical drivers and managers of public financial management in upgrading their skills to ensuring that they are equipped to meet the challenges of modern technology in one hand, and at the same time also the practical realities of the evolving of regulations and changes in laws that happens within the financial landscape. So all this put together, that's our first leg of intervention. The second leg of intervention for the public sector, which we are about to start, is to engage the legislative arm of government to position them, prepare them very well for their oversight functions, especially when it comes to investigative activities. For example, we have written to the National Assembly. I understand that very soon we'll have the opportunity to see the President of the Senate. But before then, we've written to the National Assembly that in appreciation for passing our charter, the Institute will offer free services to support every committee of the National Assembly that is instituted for investigations. This is not to undermine their constitutional role for constituting investigative committees. We will provide back-end analytics for them that will guide them. So that is what we plan to do for them. And for the judiciary, we also have that challenge because forensics is novel. And like I said, it cut across 127 body of knowledge. Now, even our judges, the judiciary, we need to also prepare them to understand the evolution of forensic, to understand how to deal with forensic cases, to understand the protocols of administering forensic evidence in courts, so that we will have faster and speedier adjudication on our cases. So actually it's humongous what we are doing in the public sector.
So when you look at the large-scale financial misdemeanors we see in the country today, what does that tell you?
It's actually dreadful and frightening. For example, recently I had the privilege of paying a courtesy call to His Excellency Atiku Bagudu, the Commissioner for the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning. And I expressed to him that in my view, the case of Binance was an economic sabotage. And that is why institute like ours is very, very important to make sure that we take steps working with relevant federal government agencies to build capacity to make sure that we forestall issues like that. And I'm happy to state here that we are getting positive signal from them, that we're going to work together to see that we conduct joint studies in this area so that we will be able to understand the typologies of how these kind of things happen and forestall it. And then again, when you look at the landscape of technology, we've seen the amazing growth of fintechs. Now we have a lot of unicorns in Nigeria. We have maybe about 5, and very soon it will be probably about 7. Now, would unicorns all in the tech space, what that means also is that we need to work together with them to safeguard the tech ecosystem, because all transactions now are technology-based, and even government transactions are all driven by technology. So this is very important both for the private and the public sector.
Now, this brings us to the very core of how we've couched to this program, safeguarding public finances. And in, in evolving a spending culture, appropriation to spending, expenditure,
Yes.
where will this institute come in? Because you do have a large number of professionals anyway, accountants, auditors, people who carry out oversight functions. And it's amazing that despite the presence of these people in performing their duties,
Yes.
things slip through easily, and you hear of humongous amounts of money gone down the drain.
Yes. Well, I think our own approach to this is that we are looking at it even broader than what happens within the financial ecosystem. Because finance is the exit. You have chain of activities before money goes out. And monies are actually tied to either public procurement, because that's the channel. It starts from budget, then to public procurement, and then payments. So as an institute, we are looking at the thing holistically from three lenses, starting from budgeting process, that the right things in terms of value for money, in terms of real actual projects, are budgeted across the three tiers of government. Then public procurement, we also want to make sure that there is value for money and the procurement processes are followed, due process are adhered to. And then you come to finance, where you now look at the regulations itself and how to adhere to those regulations. So when you look at it in bits, somehow you lose the whole picture. To tackle this, you have to understand the entire value chain and how it's linked, so that at the end, you'll be able to curtail it.
There's a new word that came into Nigeria's lexicon not too long ago. It's called padding.
Yes.
And with a body like yours, how easy would it be to identify things that have been padded? You go beyond padding, you have issues of procurement, inflated, sums.
Yes.
At the end of the day, you also have one that's as old, has been with us for quite some time, the kickbacks, the underhand passages, which
Yes.
You'd like to call bribes and all
Yes.
that happen. All these tied to public spending and public finances.
Yes.
How would this put an end to that?
Well, we do our bits. It's a lot of work. The National Assembly has the powers to do appropriation, and therefore the best we can do, and the focus of the Institute, is to make sure that the budget lines, first of all, they make sense, so that we don't have items in the budget that doesn't make sense. For example, why would you have maybe procurement of agricultural equipment in NTA budget? It doesn't make sense. So I'm just giving an example. So the idea is, first of all, is to make sure that we have the budget line speaks to the items. And then the next stage to that, as to whether that thing is even needed or not. Because we have seen it, budget over budget, where that challenge is there. You see budget lines that are off mandate of the institute or of the MDA in question. So that is one area that we are looking at this thing. The other area we are also looking at this, for procurement, if you look at it, if you look at the engineering, procurement, and construction, the EPCs, we have a lot of engineering fraud that people don't know about. The way engineering fraud is committed, first, there is what we call the basis of design. The basis of design is the logic of it, and that what gives rise to the design itself. So engineering fraud starts from the basis of design. And then you do the design based on the fraud. And then you do the procurement. And then you do the construction. So again, we want to attack this thing in a very strategic manner that has never been seen. Because what we've realized with what we are doing is like going round and going nowhere. We've not sat down to look at how these things are interrelated and linked. And therefore, it's like over the years, we've been chasing the ambulance. And that's why once these laboratories are up, I guarantee you that Nigerians will begin to feel the effect of why the institute exists.
Would it be, for instance, a prerequisite
Yes.
for the execution? Let's take, for instance, an engineering design. Would it be a prerequisite
Yes.
for any design
Yes.
at the basic stages to go through some form of scrutiny?
Absolutely, because that is why we want to engage the body of engineers at the highest level. We've gone to Korean to say, look, let's look at this together. And they agreed that that is an area of concern and that we should work together to make sure we come up with a kind of protocol that will address these issues. And I believe that once that is done, two things will happen. We will now have a situation where there is a forensic review on designs to ensure that it's tied to value for money, and not just value for money, to also look at its structural composition as to whether, in terms of the composition and components is correct. Then another huge area also that is concerned, even to the engineers, is the issue of product specifications. Especially when you look at, we have a lot of substandard goods coming from like Asia and all of that being dumped into Africa, including Nigeria. And again, the idea is you see a product, what is specified there is not equal to the content. So again, forensic review of product specifications will take that out. And unfortunately, that has even encroached into even pharmaceuticals.
Right.
So it's not just even products, but even drugs. So again, that takes us back to the use of the laboratories. Because if the laboratories are there and they are independently run, which means if NAFDAC goes there to test drugs, and if something happened, there is an independent laboratory owned by the institute that any other Nigerian can go also can revalidate what has been done. The same thing with SON. If they say this product, they have cleared it, it's standard, it can enter the Nigerian shelves, and it's contested, people can go to court and say, well, SON has given us clearance, but we want to make sure that this product is actually what it is. So I think it's a long way to come, but at the same time, assuring Nigerians that we'll get there. The crucial steps have been taken, which is the establishment of the law. We will build it block by block.
How will this facilitate the fight against corruption and other financial crimes? The quick dispensation of justice, where you find some cases drag on and on for lack of due. When it gets extremely difficult to prove, because for those who are committing these crimes, they take the pains to really hide their tracks.
Yeah, forensics knowledge is handy because it aids investigation. It makes it speedier. And it also facilitates easy adjudication, because what delays cases in courts is sometimes, apart from the technicalities, being infused by lawyers, one of the huge delays is the ability of the prosecution to prove its case. And with forensics, now prosecutors, they have tools that can help them get their cases analysis easily done, that you can prove your case before the court so faster. So I'm also assuring you, sir, that with the laboratories up, we have smarter investigations, which means the quantum of money that will be wasted and time on investigating cases will be shorter. And then also the rate of prosecution, the success rate will increase, which means ICPC, EFCC, all of them will have, and the police will have higher success rate in prosecuting their cases, because now these laboratories will aid their cases. And then for the judges, again, once the evidence is there beyond reasonable doubts, they'll go ahead and deliver their judgments.
Well, at this point in time, we'll take a short break. When we return, there'll be other issues. For instance, who would be these certified fraud investigators and what would be their background? Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Why should we be in a difficult situation financially?
Once upon a time we were rich, but we're not a rich country anymore.
Disaster management is everybody's business.
In all these times, the organization turned to Nigeria.
We would as much want to harness the capacity that is within us so that we see how we can become self-reliant.
1 month ended and you said you are increasing warning strike by 2 months. I mean, you are incubating madness.
Even if these are officials of government who have been told to go and enforce the law and they have gone against the law itself, they must be held accountable.
One-on-One, Friday, 10:30 p.m. on NTA Network.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm still here with Dr. Iliyasu Gashinbaki, President and Chairman, Governing Council, Chartered Institute of Forensics and Certified Fraud Investigators. Well, Dr. Gashinbaki,
Yes, sir.
who are these investigators? And it follows to pose this question. If we've had this challenge for quite a while, yes, and now this institute is up and running, expectedly to have a crop of forensics and certified fraud investigators, then we might ask, what are the numbers that we're looking at here, given the huge task that lies ahead of this institute?
Yeah, like I said, the institute has a college, and that college, by the way, the EFCC has been our biggest supporter. Even before the charter, they've given us all the support and all through that process. So immediately the charter happened, they said, all right, for the college, you know, you are starting, the resources is not there, we'll support you, domicile the college within the EFCC. And that has happened. All our trainings, we conduct them in the EFCC Academy, Karu. The next one is coming at the end of this month, is every 2 months. So our entry strategy, just like any other young institute, is that normally you will have to start with people with cognate knowledge. Mm-hmm. So we have commenced the training of people with cognate knowledge in digital, accountants, auditors, engineers. So those are the crops of people we're targeting, and most of them, the entry level is their own professional certifications.
Right.
So for example, for accountants, you have to be ICANN or you have to be ANAN before you even qualify for us to admit you for our training. So for engineers, you have to be current certified and all of that. So that's this entry standards that we have set for the institute. For now, the entry barrier is high, and the reason is this: get people with cognate knowledge, bring them in, upgrade them to the level of forensic analytics, and then release them into the system. So we have done that, like I said, cutting across literally all MDS now. I think there is no place that we've not trained 1 or 2 persons in that cadre. And then we have also built a strategic alliance with the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation. By the way, the Institute has 8 institutional members on its council.
Right.
Finance, Justice, Trade and Investment, Health, Police Service Commission. There are about 8, including the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation. So because of that, we have a strategic alliance with the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation, where we are doing continuous training support for them. And the idea is to extend that to the state. Last year, we brought in all the Auditor Generals of states and the Auditor Generals of local governments. Not last year, and all the Auditor Generals of local governments to also upgrade their knowledge so that they are in sync with what is happening at the federal.
Now that you speak of the local governments,
Yes.
it brings to mind that Supreme Court judgment
Yes, sir.
in favor of the autonomy, financial autonomy of local government
Yes, sir.
councils. How would managing local council finances and resources in the face of what we've seen in the past, where a lot would seem not in tune with recommended practices?
All right. First of all, let me commend the president for taking us this far. In my view, and I think that's the view of the Institute as well, we've looked at this. I think the Supreme Court judgment perhaps is the most profound step ever taken since 1999 in deepening democracy and ensuring our 3 tiers of federalism works. I'm highly optimistic that this is good, and part of my optimism is that if you look at it, this is the first time that power and resources is now being devolved to a tier of government that doesn't have immunity. At the federal level, the president and the vice president, they have immunity. State level, the governors and the deputy governors have immunity. Now we have resources going to 774 local governments without immunity, which means it's easier. We can hold them accountable while in office. So I think Nigerians should celebrate this. And with the right support, we would see, instead of getting worried, I think we should worry less.
Really?
Yes, we should worry less because it will be easy to put structures of accountability and transparency. Because like I said, the catch there is that there is no immunity.
Some worry that councils that have not been able to manage finances all this while
Yes.
now suddenly have all that money
Yes.
coming straight in.
Yes. Yeah, that's a bother. And people are even fixated about the federal location.
Right.
What people don't know, local government also are entitled to 10% of state IGR. This is in accordance with the Revenue Allocation Act. Beyond that, additional pockets monies that they collect, levies, pursuant to Section 7 of the Constitution that provided long list of things that they should do.
You know, Dr. Gashinbaki,
Yeah.
a lot of leakages,
Yes.
have been said to occur at local and state level, where collections of IGR, you find it sometimes extremely difficult to hold anybody accountable, whether they are properly documented or recorded. There are all kinds of levies which you find in local at local council levels, and no one can really tell where those monies go to.
Yes, I think there is a bit of confusion there, but the optimism is that the local government system, as envisaged by the 1999 Constitution as amended, has its own organs and structures that are supposed to make it work. For example, at state level, we have Auditor General for local governments, responsible for auditing and oversight on local government books. That's number one. Number two, at the local government level, we also have their legislative arm. The legislative arm of the local government are the councillors. They are responsible for passing the local government budget and also enacting local government bylaws and providing all the legislative oversight at that level, at that tier of government. And now, within the councillor also, they have what we call supervisory councillors. So they are the ones with designated portfolios that guides, they are just like commissioners and ministers at state and federal level, the supervisory councillors. Then, of course, for the local government civil service itself, we have the Local Government Civil Service Commission. So if you look at it from the lenses, all we need to do, sir, is rather is to amplify and build capacity of these structures. When we do that, local government will breathe. It will function. This quantum of resources will be managed and will be managed well. And the Institute, maybe alongside with the EFCC, the ICPC, I think we need to come together to be very deliberate about building their capacity across three major areas: budget, public procurement, and then the revenue management. We need to build their capacity in those areas.
It's a digital world. Yes. And of course, you mentioned earlier on that there's a lot that goes on digitally.
Yes, sir.
And you speak of training as well.
Yes.
How profound, especially with what occurs today in the digital world?
Yes, a lot. Just like you said, almost 2.5 decades of lack of governance at the third tier of government. And now they have trillions probably knocking their door. It's already in the news. SEREP has gone to court to compel the 36 state governors, including the FCT minister, to show us what they have done with monies received since 1999 in excess of 40 trillion on behalf of the local governments. Now, that gives you an idea of the quantum of money that is going to come there. And therefore, it dovetails to these questions that first, digitalization is a must. It has to happen, that the financial management system of the local government has to be digitalized end to end in a manner that we can see transparently the flow of resources up to projects that they are executed. That's one leg. The other leg is also to get the public procurement part done. The public procurement law for states also covers the local governments. So again, I want to make this call that all states that have yet to domesticate the Public Procurement Act, because we have the BPP is at the federal level. So state had to domesticate that law at each subnationals. And it covers the local government level. So states that are yet to do that, they should immediately make sure they do that, so that by the time the money comes, the law is there to guide the procurement process. So 2 legs, digitalization and mapping of the entire revenue management system, and ensuring that we have the law that guides public procurement at the 3rd tier of government is important.
You also spoke about the private sector also, which you were empowered to cover. And many a times you see people alluding that these sharp practices only occur in the public sector, but we have also seen very high levels of financial mismanagement and fraud in the private sector. Now, the question here is, can individuals approach the institute, raise questions about the workings of runnings of any organization that bears relevance to the state?
Yes. The idea of the institute, we are a professional body. And being a professional body, we are both for the private and the public sector. And that is why, again, we have so many people that we've trained from the private sector. And the private sector, that is where the practice is. Because our professionals that are into practice are chartered, certified fraud investigators, or chartered certified forensic accountant, or whatever, because we have multidisciplinary designations. Now, these professionals service both the public and the private sector. And let me give you an example. Currently today, we have thousands of cases, and I mean thousands of cases, with the Nigerian police that needs forensic analysis. And the truth is, government resources alone cannot fund these things. It's beyond the little resources that government has. And therefore, once these forensic laboratories are up, what will happen then is that all these banks, insurance companies...
Right, I'm thinking about them.
Yes.
Banks, insurance, and other financial institutions.
Yes, they have a lot of concerns that they would want to have it properly analyzed. And because the laboratories are there, they will pay for those services for it to be done. And what that would do is that it has prepared evidence easily for law enforcement to work on. So it will reduce the workload of the police, the EFCC, and the ICPC. So it's all for good. And the benefit, I can tell you, as much as the public sector will gain, the private sector will also gain even twice as much.
You talked about involvement also in ballistics. You talked about a lab that would be capable of analyzing ballistics. And how would this apply to, for instance, the war against terror and such other criminalities involving the use of explosives and other ordnances?
Yes, in so many ways, because currently now, as we have seen, light arms and small weapons has filtered down the Sahel, and that has not been helpful. So one of the contributions of the Institute towards tackling terrorism, apart from the tracking the financial aspect, terrorist financing, the other aspect is to also make sure that we have standard laboratories that can aid the work of law enforcement, so that these laboratories will have up-to-date facilities that are upgraded world class to meet the realities of modern policing, modern law enforcement requirement, which of course we all know that government doesn't have the resources to do it all by itself. Government doesn't. So the idea is that we will fill in that gap, and then they will patronize the laboratories for the services of analysis that will be tendered during their investigation and eventually in court.
Well, 3 areas
Yes.
would interest a lot of Nigerians.
Yes.
2 of them have been with us for quite some time.
Yes.
The third, awareness, is only now beginning.
Yes.
And these 3 areas I'm talking about is the one to do with documents, identity theft,
Yes.
and the latest, which is gaining a lot of public attention now, the question of determining DNA.
Very good question. I think last month we went to see the Minister of Interior, and we had a wide range of conversation around identity theft, around issues associated with passports, fraud, and all of that. And again, we are working at that level to see how the Institute brings into bear to support. And the good thing that has also happened is the movement of NMC to the Ministry of Interior. So you now have like an overarching oversight over the key agencies that should typically interrelate. So we are looking at that area very well, and with our digital forensic lab coming to be very soon, it will help in supporting whatever NIMC is doing, whatever the Nigerian Immigration Service is doing, and everything that has to do with identity, and then the back end of authenticating this document. Just that you know that law enforcement agencies have tried their bit, but without technology, we cannot go beyond what we've done. I know very well that before the EFCC, you can literally forge any documents in Nigeria. You just go to Oluwole and get it done. It was EFCC that dismantled Oluwole, to their credit. But we have to take it further. It's not just about documents now. Digital fraud, digital identity fraud, digital manipulation has gone viral, that we need to also now provide the necessary technology that will assist law enforcement agencies to do their work properly. And the minister has given us a blank check to work together. I'm excited about the evolving partnership between the Institute and the Ministry of Interior. And by the way, they are also part of our council.
All right.
Yes.
I have my mind on the latest of it all, AI.
Yeah. Yes. AI is disrupting everything. AI is going to be the most important forensic tool ever because it will aid, or it's aiding our work. Because so far, we already have a wide range of forensic services that are AI aided. And that's the way to go. And very soon also, with the infusion of AI into even our curricula, into our digital forensic space, we are very, very confident that there will be a pushback, especially to digital-related fraud. Within the last 10 years, Nigeria has suffered over 10 trillion of digital fraud, which is almost an average of $1 trillion a year. It's not a sustainable thing. The world is becoming more and more integrated. The digital space is taking the central space in literally everything. So AI is the way. And for forensics, today is the most powerful tool that we have.
Dr. Iliyasu Gashinbaki, President, Chairman, Governing Council, Chartered Institute of Forensics and Certified Fraud Investigators, it's been interesting talking to you. We hope you can come again sometime, particularly when these laboratories are up and running, so we can have further updates on how the Institute is carried out its work. We'd like to thank you for coming on One-on-One.
Great honor and privilege to be here, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be back with One-on-One. I am Cyril Stover. Bye for now.